Okay, so this afternoon I'm sitting here with Therese Sprinkel. Therese is, I guess, one of our pioneer members of psychological practitioners in Finland. I feel this interview is really important because Therese is a qualified licensed psychotherapist from the US.
Yes.
We're also following Ruth Franco, but I think it's important to get both stories of a psychologist and a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
So, Therese, tell us a little bit about your journey to being recognised as a psychotherapist in Finland when you got here.
Yeah, well, yes, it has been quite a journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first part of it is that in 2008
Mm-hmm.
I ended a 7-year training path to becoming licensed.
Wow, so that's a long qualification journey.
It's a long qualification journey, and I'm really proud to say that I fast-tracked it. A lot of people in California take anywhere from 10 to 12 years
Wow.
to achieve this profession of psychotherapy. It's time-consuming and it's rigorous.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I finished that in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and I had started practicing as a intern
Right.
in 2004. So I've been practicing almost, this spring it will be 20 years.
Long time. You're
Yeah.
a seasoned. Should we say that you're a seasoned psychotherapist?
I'm starting to taste the seasoning.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Starting to I like that.
Yes. Yeah. And in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
my partner and I decided to move to Helsinki because he had a job offer.
Right.
So in 2011, I contacted many people in Finland, but also Belgrade.
Right.
Yeah.
Good old Valvira.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I did so by, like, I read their website and
Mm-hmm.
I sent them an email and I just described what I saw on the website around the steps that I needed to take to validate my
Mm-hmm.
license.
Mm-hmm.
And they wrote back, and it was a very short email from
Okay.
them. And basically the reply was, don't bother. You won't ever be qualified in Finland.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that feel to receive that?
Well, at first I thought it was a mistake. Like, I thought they thought I was asking for something different because I couldn't even really register why, if I've got a qualification,
Right.
why wouldn't I at least just have like maybe a bureaucratic process, maybe a class or two,
Right.
maybe like maybe one of the universities
Yes.
has.
So some sort of equivalency training or...
Yeah, because my profession is in mental health, so I just assumed there was a step or a series of steps to take.
Right.
And so I didn't understand maybe there was a miscommunication because it was so short. And when I sent some more email back, like
Yeah.
explaining, no, really, your website says I fill out this form, and I didn't hear anything back after that.
Oh, wow. So they kind of blanked you.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So it made me really nervous and scared. I was very scared at that point.
yeah. Gosh. And you hadn't even moved here yet.
No, I hadn't moved here yet.
Okay. Despite that, you decided to come.
Truly. I mean, some of it was that I had an established private business already.
Right.
I was working for myself, and I had both private psychotherapy clients
Right.
and a contract with an organization.
Okay.
So I was doing some work that could be done on the internet, and I just was kind of like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I just had sort of this, I'm going to figure this out attitude.
So you were sort of positive and hopeful that something would sort itself out once you got here.
Yes, I was positive, hopeful. I was also far enough in my career, I believe. When I look back now, I see that I was far enough in my career that even though I was scared and nervous and I wasn't getting the signals that would really give me confidence to move forward, I was also experienced enough to say to myself, I'm going to do whatever retraining it takes. I will take the steps.
Right.
They've got to be there, even though I didn't get like a warm welcome, shall
Right.
we say, from the licensing board.
Right. So you obviously had, a good amount of resiliency, and you were like, right,
Yeah.
this isn't the end.
Yeah, I'd met other obstacles in my career and I'd overcome them well enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were like, right.
Yeah.
So what happened when you got here?
Well, I got here and I did send another email to Valvera, and they did say that it was very clear that my license is not acceptable in Finland and that I would need to retrain. So at that time, I got a more clear response.
Okay.
Well, let's say it was more words, but it was very vague in that I still didn't understand why my already established license wasn't going to work.
Right.
And I decided to open an office and just do like general counseling services.
Right.
Just basically not tell anyone that I was a qualified professional,
Right.
but just make a business that
Yes.
was smaller
Right.
to try to test the waters, if
Right.
you know what I mean.
And I think we should tell the listener now that, anyone, well, not anyone, but people who are counsellors and therapists can set up private practices.
Absolutely.
But in terms of Valvera, you just have to be careful about what you call yourself. By calling yourself a psychotherapist without the license could get you in trouble. But if you call yourself a counsellor or a therapist,
Yeah.
that's okay. And I guess the other issue with all of this, in terms of not having, there's so many issues, but one of the sort of biggies is that therapists and counsellors aren't counted as health professionals, so they have to charge and they have to pay VAT.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you set up your own private practice.
Yeah.
And how did it go?
Well, it went extremely well, to be totally honest.
So there was a need.
There was a huge need. In fact, it was really stressful and a bit isolating.
Right.
Lonely at times.
Tell me about that isolation and loneliness. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think, well, I was terrified to reach out to qualified therapists here in Finland who had done their whole career track here in Finland. That was terrifying for me, because I was like, okay, I was going to keep this really small and just sort of test things out, and then kaboom, like constant flow of emails.
Right.
Always, every week, many requests. There's no way I could have taken that many clients.
Wow. So more clients than you could actually take on.
Way more.
Wow.
And also a really overwhelming theme of feedback from these clients when I would start with them, and I would, be doing the usual work of asking them, have you received therapy before?
Right.
And really got very loud feedback about their therapeutic experience in Finland.
Okay. And what was that? What was the general theme, or some of the general themes?
The biggest themes were that it was very difficult for Finnish professionals to understand their cultural perspective.
Right.
They also felt like the idea of what therapy was culturally really different in Finland than it was, say, where they were from, or maybe what they had in mind and what they needed.
Right.
And, to which I was always like, okay, well, when faced with this problem, did you give that feedback?
Right.
And the overwhelming story was that they really had doors closed in their face from therapists, which was a very shocking thing for me to listen to hear about other therapists being quite like closed down or refusing to have this feedback or to really help the person get the kind of therapy that they want or need.
Goodness me.
And then it was And then there were other stories, especially around like more difficult clinical work, like couples or family work, where it was really more like, it doesn't seem like Finnish therapists can do this work, or they're not as clear about methods, a number of methods. So I started hearing this feedback, and that scared me. Not that I thought that Finnish therapists were poor,
right,
but more that there was this big communication barrier.
Right.
Like there's mental health in Finland, and then there's the rest of the world.
Right.
And it scared me because I wanted to get to know Finnish professionals, and I wanted to be a part of my profession here in Finland. You wanted
to connect.
Yeah.
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 But you were scared to connect because you were worried with who you were connecting with.
Yeah, absolutely. I was worried about their point of view. I was worried what they would think about my training.
Right.
And my path toward, being a psychotherapist in Finland.
Right.
Nevertheless.
Right. Here comes, so despite sadness, rejection.
Yeah.
And this experience of supporting clients who've also been rejected.
Yeah.
And are also sad.
And disappointed by trying to have therapy and not really getting anywhere.
Right. So you're disappointed, they're disappointed.
Yeah.
But you still had resiliency left.
Well, I really wanted to reality test. I wanted a professional network.
Right.
I wanted to know what was going on.
Right.
I wanted to get a better view. I am actually really motivated in my profession. I really enjoy it.
Right.
So I wasn't like coming around to maybe I made the wrong choice and I should just do something else.
Right. You were like, this is my profession, this is my vocation. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually felt like more purposeful. I dug in.
Okay.
I wanted to go to trainings. I wanted to try to go to association meetings. I wanted to try to meet other mental health professionals.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
So instead of going in, which is, would be a very validated response, you were like, no, I'm going out. I'm going to stay proactive here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say that's been rough.
Right.
Yeah. The place where it's really worked out for me is when I have gone from things in my methodology that I've learned over the years that I've been trained in, methods that have really clicked with me, that I know show up in my work on the regular.
Right.
And then I Google search until I find a professional in Finnish or Swedish who is basically speaking about the same methodology.
Oh, wow.
And I just go one by one and email them.
Right.
And try to meet them, and I'll explain my situation and say, I'd love to take you out for a coffee. I want to hear about how you work. And I would say at least 7 out of 10 just never answer my email.
Wow.
Sure.
Okay.
But the ones who meet me have really become trusted colleagues. It's been a really good process for me, I think, overall.
Wow.
When it comes to, like going to trainings in general, going to associations that I'm really attracted to that are based in, say, body methodologies or certain, certain approaches.
Right.
Zero contact. Really, really hard to make contact with professionals there.
What does that feel? It feels like there's a barrier or something. How does that feel?
It was really hard for me in the beginning. I had never had that professional experience.
Right.
I didn't try very long. I'll still go to a training here and there in Finland, but it's one of these bigger, just like listen to a lecture things.
Right.
I gave up on the idea of going into like a methodology training that was put on, even if it's in Finnish. I tried a few times with one of those. People would literally not even look at me.
Wow.
Or if they would talk to me, they would ask me a few questions about my professional life, and then they would just sort of say something that said they didn't really believe that it was going to work out for me, and walk away.
Gosh, I mean, I'm quite stunned. It feels like sort of almost like bullying in a way, but not. It's just a shutdown.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a rather reserved culture,
right?
And I do know that and
right.
respect that,
right?
I think also there's not always a need for networking. Like I had a need
right.
for networking,
right?
And maybe like I get that they didn't relate to that.
I guess what you're saying is that Finnish mental health professionals have their own networks,
for sure,
and they don't necessarily need anything more, or
no,
they don't understand this thing of sort of supporting other people who might not be in the network, or
and I have to say it was for much of the first, I would say, like 3-4 years, it was a very negative experience.
Right.
Now I don't feel such.
Okay.
It's really changed for me.
Okay. What is it? What's led to the change? What's led to the...
Well, after the first about 3 years of being terrified all the time that I was going to be somehow found out, or that this rejection was going to continue and there was no end in sight.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we just, before you go on, I just want to sort of, so that the listeners kind of really understand this. You are a mental health professional supporting other immigrants in Finland, and you've been feeling terrified at points, especially at the beginning, terrified. Yeah.
I really think just like hearing some of either the questions or things being pointed out about my career path, and just the general theme of the idea, it's impossible for me to practice here. And I was practicing.
Yeah.
And it was quite a vibrant practice.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And I was employing supervisors, consultants, trainers back in my home country.
Right.
To support my business here and to support me as a professional, because I didn't have that network here.
So you had to turn to the US to get a network to be able to support your clients here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And that actually, I mean, obviously it did support me and it helped me quite a bit, but it actually did like deepen some of the fear and anxiety, because I was just always in that cultural set. I wasn't sharing my ideas professionally.
Right.
This is a big part of it. I think that's ethically also really a big part of the profession in general.
Absolutely.
That you shouldn't be alone in a silo.
Yeah.
Just having these experiences and attempting to build your own personal resources up to support clients.
Right.
And I was supporting all of these clients who were having the exact same professional experiences, even if it's not in mental health, that I was having.
Right. Gosh. Yeah, and it's difficult when you're, I think, as a therapist, as a mental health worker, when you're with a client and you're going through exactly what they're going through.
Yeah.
And there's no way for you to communicate that to another person so that they would understand you in order for you to support the client better.
Yeah. I think I was afraid I was always going to be found out.
Right.
Somehow, even though I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. I don't have some sort of unethical or illegal business. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't misbehaving with my clients.
No.
I was taking all the steps that I needed to take to stay professionally relevant, trained, supported.
Mm-hmm.
But this fear was really big, especially in the first few years.
Right.
And it got bigger as my business grew.
Right.
And it was really, for me, it was really about, re-experiencing this rejection. I had to really push myself to want to network with other Finnish mental health professionals.
Right. Wow. But push you did.
Yeah.
And despite, emails not answered, you had a few that were answered and started to create a network in that way.
I did.
Wow.
I would say there were 4 or 5 sort of core people,
right,
who I have now trusted over 11 years.
Wow. Okay.
And, we share all the usual things that you would in a network: clients, trainings, also just like interesting topics in the society that
right.
need consideration in our profession, or here's a rising star talking about these issues, or hey Therese, what do you think about these kinds of innovations in psychotherapy from
right.
these places? Have you been trained in that? Do you like that? Do you
sharing
use that?
ideas?
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah,
inspiring.
Very.
Yeah.
And I really trust these people, especially like they've sometimes taken some of my clients, or maybe the other half of a couple, so I've been able to have a window into their work.
Wow.
As professionals. But the one thing I have to say that's never been touched or
right.
crossed is my experience as a professional. These people, these few core people who've really, let's say, let me into their professional lives,
right.
and I've let them in my professional life,
mm-hmm.
have literally never asked me about my path to licensure, my professional life in Finland, my experience, like zero, nothing.
No curiosity. Or is it they're scared to ask you? What do you think it is?
I mean, I can't guess. As I've been sort of skirting around here, I decided a while ago that I'm not going to feed my fear.
Right.
So I try not to guess what they're thinking.
Right.
If they're not
using
not,
the psychotherapy on yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is one of my coping skills, is that I've decided, like, if this isn't of interest in me,
right.
I'm going to find other parts of the society that might be interested in my work.
Right. Okay.
But what I am guessing is they know quite well that the restrictions do not allow me to translate my license literally
right.
into Finnish society.
Right.
And I think they know quite well that they just don't touch it because they understand it's a sensitive topic. That's what I assume.
That feels like a healthy way of putting it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop and start now,
yeah.
because otherwise it's going to be too long a recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Therese, I'm interested now about how you started, because now there are quite many of us,
mm-hmm.
and quite a few foreign mental health workers here in Finland, and I wanted to ask you about your sort of journey into meeting us and how that started to change things for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, much like the registration of my license,
mm-hmm.
before I even moved here, I did actually search
uh-huh.
and try to make contact, also not just with people who are originally from Finland and licensed here, but I also really wanted to take a look, like, are there other psychotherapists who have come from somewhere else and they're working in Finland?
Right.
And how did it go?
Right.
And the first person I found was Ruth Franco.
Right.
And I actually emailed with her before I moved here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in the last 11 years, we have become trusted colleagues. And,
right.
That it was similar to what I was explaining before. Like,
right.
I would search online and send an email into the dark, and there was a much higher hit ratio with people who are from somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah. There was always a reply. Even if it was, I'm too busy for this.
Right.
But you're lovely. So glad you're here. That kind of thing.
Right.
This kind of collegial, I'm going to throw you, a lifesaver.
Right.
And let you know, I'm here, we're doing the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, even if they couldn't have a lot of contact. But yeah, that's how I started. Ruth was the first person that I met. Gosh, I think Andy was the next person.
Right. And I think Andy is like you. So the Ruth's psychologist's qualifications are recognised, but not her psychotherapy. They are now, because she's retrained here. But Andy, amazingly, Andy, like you, his qualifications are not recognised here.
Yeah.
How did it feel to meet someone like that?
I was reassured because he's a friendly, lovely guy.
Yeah.
And it meant that we could sit down and have this conversation.
Right.
About the situation.
Right.
And for whatever reason, which Andy didn't really share with me, he was less confident about the whole set up your own business and go for it idea than I was.
Right.
I mean, some of it is like, I came from a big city in the US. I've taken different turns in my career. I was less afraid of consequences to give things a try. And so our, networking relationship quickly turned into talking about, okay, what is actually legal? What's ethical? What is the shape and the size of this? And it was really supportive.
Wow.
Right away.
Great.
And very friendly.
Great.
Yeah.
Did that help your fear? Did that help your anxiety to meet someone in the same position as you?
Most definitely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I was still having these feelings, obviously, and I could see that he was too, but immediately we were both like, okay, here we are on a Thursday having this conversation. Like, it just made the whole thing a lot more realistic.
Right.
And grounded.
Right.
And not so open-ended, fear-based questions about the whole thing.
I get this phrase has come up in my head, this kind of hiding in the shadows kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can come out of the shadows a little bit, maybe. Test the waters. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in my friendship with Andy, I was definitely the one who was like, hey, give this private practice thing a try. There's so many clients. There's so many clients.
Yes, there's so many people who need help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he too was really apprehensive, scared. He's maybe spoken for himself on this topic. But yeah, it felt, I think, for him and other professionals that I networked with eventually, that it was safer to have a job in mental health in Finland.
Wow. Because
it felt frightening. Like, if you are defining what you're doing and you have your own opinion about what mental health is, will that bring in the negative feedback? Yeah.
And I think, I'm sort of reflecting on myself, I think, so I'm a clinical psychologist from the UK and got here and kind of got my license, but got ball-parted in doing school psychology.
Okay, yeah.
And I think I hid in that, even though it wasn't, essentially in the UK, school psychologist, the educational psychologist is not even my career path at all.
Yeah, it's totally different.
But path, I think I hid in that because of the safety.
Sure.
Yeah, because it was, it's a regular, well-paid job, and I'm not breaking rules anywhere. I'm just, yeah.
I understand completely.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I wasn't successful at hiding. I don't.
But I think, Therese, the difference is that I was given a license to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I understand. Okay, so let's say that. So you're a clinical psychologist from the UK. You got your education and licensing there.
Yes.
But when you come to Finland, you're met with the issue of the way the regulations work in Finland is that a clinical psychologist license is different than a psychotherapy license.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's true also in the society
Yes.
I come from.
Yeah.
Although, let's say I was a clinical psychologist,
Yeah.
I wouldn't also be able to gain an equivalent license in psychotherapy.
Right. Yes. So, I guess in the US and the UK, clinical psychologists have training in psychotherapy.
Exactly.
And we do that in our work.
Right.
But clinical psychologists in Finland don't really have much training in psychotherapy. So, yeah. So then I was like, ooh, my wings are clipped. I'm not supposed to be doing psychotherapy then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, I can be happily employed in school psychology, and I guess that's where I'm going to be.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then, but doing psychotherapy in my schoolwork, probably more than any other average Finnish psychologist would be doing.
Sure.
Yeah. But then feeling safe that I could do it in that context.
Yeah.
Because I was employed in a job, you know.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I've heard this story from others, and on the other hand, it does leave you with this. I hear you talking about it, and I've heard others say it. This feeling of that you're hiding it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hiding who I am.
Yeah.
Mm.
Which I also felt, even though I was completely out in the open, and I made up a web of paperwork for my clients, which a lot of people actually, they still laugh at me. They're like, Therese, wow, this is like 12 pages.
Legalese.
Okay. I'm gonna
just
be,
in case.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't read it. Do you want to just tell me what's going on here? You know? And I'm like, great. So I'll try to, tell you in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay? Here's what goes on in Finland, and I do this whole tap dance about how I am not going to, harm them with my form of psychotherapy, which has been formed and licensed in another country, and that I will promise to protect them and help them get psychotherapy or mental health services here in Finland, if need be. Mm-hmm. And it makes me feel good about my fear. Yeah. And it helped me feel comfortable with the place that I was in, which was very much alone.
In other words, kind of being really clear to your clients that I'm not hoodwinking you.
Yes.
I'm a real professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the real deal.
I'm the real deal. I really understand the legal, moral, ethical, and mental health consequences of what I have to offer you and how it's not connected to anything else in Finland.
Right.
And yes, I do still nevertheless promise to email your psychotherapist 10 to 12 times until I get an answer.
Right. Yeah.
So I would do this promise of service, really, with clients that look, hey, we're out on the edges here. I'm still going to do my thing to provide you mental health best I can, and I'll do whatever I can to help you connect with other mental health when the time comes, if the time comes.
Right. Yeah. I think that's sort of a really important part of our work, that perhaps, working on the outside in the shadows, you have to know what's going on in the main party. You do. And you have to be really aware of all the services and how they work and how to access them. And
yes.
Yeah.
And best you can I was trying all the time to, ask extra questions here and there when I did come in contact with other mental health professionals about their services and programs and how it went, and maybe even their thoughts or mindset about what I'm doing, so that I could get a better understanding.
Wow, it's amazing to hear all this, Therese, I have to say. I think one thing I want to ask, which is important before we finish, is it feels like, we're sort of, the journey's been hard, but I'm interested to know how you felt about the formation finally psychological practitioners in Finland, and how that has helped you in your work.
Yeah. Really, honestly, from the first meetings, it was really uplifting.
Right.
To have all of us focused on the topic of how do our professional lives actually fit here in Finland.
Right.
And is there anything we can do?
Right.
It felt like a really uplifting relief.
Yes.
And very, very comforting to not just, commune with others, but instead become connected and focused and start to try to find some steps that we can start to take to unite, to make more of a collective voice, to be integrated more in Finland.
Yeah.
So right away, it gave me quite a lift.
Wow.
And felt really like a relief.
Yeah.
That it wasn't helpless, basically.
Yeah. And you're not alone.
And that I'm not alone, for sure.
And that there are others who have been through this, going through this, and still moving to Finland and having to start the process. And I don't know how you feel. How do you feel about those new people coming in now and that they've got PPF?
I feel super excited about that. It makes me really, really pleased. Yeah. I mean, I don't wish anybody else to be in a corner. Feeling the way that I felt.
Hiding in the shadows.
Hiding, feeling rejected. Feeling also very much like I'm missing out on some of the steps that other colleagues were taking in their careers. Feeling like, okay, I've got this very, very, very busy private practice. Good on me. That's nice. But it only goes so far to where you come back around to the idea of like, nope, that's your corner. And you better stay in it. So if it was immediately uplifting and energizing, and it gave me hope that we could, as a larger unit, find a place for ourselves in the society and start being like a beacon of hope for other professionals, which is definitely happening when I see other people come to us immediately. But also a message, like clearly a message to other Finnish professionals. Like we want you to come and connect with us. We want you to know that we're here.
And that there are these issues that we've all suffered with, and here they are, and I think there's something about the power of sharing that suffering together. And not being alone with it. It feels like powerful, doesn't it?
It feels really powerful. It is definitely empowering, and I've missed, being a member of associations. Where I'm from, I was often a member of this and that. And things that were, a part of the region or some sort of national membership. Where I could have these kinds of experiences where I would see colleagues empowering themselves. Starting to take actions. Starting to receive the support that maybe I didn't have earlier. And for me to start to get stimulated, like with my own ideas, like, oh, I really want to do this for the association, because I belong somewhere.
It's that, and I guess we feel full circle, like for any immigrant in Finland, it's I guess the most important thing to feel both professionally and personally is that you belong.
And that Finnish society is getting something from us.
Absolutely.
As well as us being here in Finnish society. That they actually have something that they can receive from us that's valuable.
And it is so valuable.
Yeah.
And I guess in our activism, it's really kind of now showing ourselves more and more and showing what we do as well. And hopefully one fine day getting Valvira to recognise qualifications properly.
Yeah.
And getting to
make a path. Make a path. make a clear path for people, especially in a society who is clearly facing a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And cultural changes that really need to
huge
be met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we have come to the end of the interview, so thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.
It was really, really wonderful.